It's very small. So you want to record to your computer, then upload that to the YouTube accounts.
Awesome. I will do that straight after the call. We now have a very short snippet of SIG cluster lifecycle in the cloud, but never mind. Cool. Hi, everyone. Let's get started. This is SIG cluster lifecycle on the 28th of February, 2017. I have been working with Ilya today. We've spent all day testing the current version of kubeadm in master, and that demonstrated a few interesting things, some of which are listed in the notes, and which, if everyone thinks it's worth doing, we can go through today, just like what we discovered and what the status of any issues is there. But before we do that, I suggest that we start with a stand-up. And as Lucas suggested to me the other day, it's great if people can put in links to the ongoing PRs and discussion there. So Lucas, you're first on the list for stand-up. Do you want to give us a summary?
Yeah.
Oh, and just before you start,
a summary of this.
Before you start, anyone else who has been working on things this week, please put links to what you've been working on in the stand-up notes in the minutes. Please go ahead. Lucas, I think your face has frozen. Hopefully not, like, for real. I know it's cold in Finland. Okay, does anyone want to go while we wait for Lucas to reconnect? Derek?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. So this week I was working on the that first link there is the changes to the join command UX, and it's kind of now in the final stage. Well, it got approved. But we had another issue, which is that second thing I linked, excuse me, about the API machinery package util errors. It was throwing some panics as we tried to access things on our error handling. I opened up a PR yesterday attempting to fix that, which is the first link, which was move away from it. But then I can't remember what his name is. I don't know his GitHub, like Legit or something. But he opened up a fix for it. So now we're waiting for that to either go in and kind of discuss around what we want to do. But it seems like that's the de facto way of doing validation inside the Kubernetes. And I think that, you know, although I personally believe that it's a little over the edge, but if that's how it's done in the code base, it makes sense of doing it. So. Yes,
I was kicked out for some reason. I don't know. Zoom crashed locally. Anyway, yeah, we've talked with Derek privately about this, and while it's compelling to write our own very lightweight thing for this, it's since I spent a lot of hours yesterday figuring out the root cause and found it as well. We should go with the official tooling we have already in API machinery. And well, I'm gonna sync with Derek later today, and we're gonna update or join UX PR and fix the nil parsing there, and as well it may have been linked somewhere here. Jordan sent a PR for fixing the root cause.
I linked that. It's the second one on under the API machinery package. The second pull request is Jordan's. I forgot his name, Jordan.
Cool. Yeah. So
can I just clarify there? 42253 is the one that we're going with. Yeah. Cool.
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah, and But until I'm gonna sync with Derek, and we'll fix it on our side as well. Yeah. Then I've made quite a lot of PRs, and most of them are merged, and some are yet to be merged. For example, one significant is 42066, and that turns off insecure access to the API server over localhost 8080. And this has UX, quite large user experience changes. Well, it's best practice, and we've talked with Joe, with Jordan, and some other SIG folks that this is the way to go. If we don't cut it now, we're gonna have. It's gonna be more difficult to cut it later, since folk gets used to having root access to the cluster at localhost, and you can bypass all RBAC rules, everything. So therefore, we do this now. However, to access your newly started cluster, you have to use the etc kubernetes admin.conf file, kubeconfig file, and we somehow have to be very clear with documenting that. It's already in the kubeadm init out that you should do export this file and so on, but still we have to document it very well, that the only way you can access your cluster is by using this kubeconfig file.
Okay, so that's fine. I am on the hook for docs, so I will make sure that is included in the docs. So my sense here is that we are saying we're going to turn off insecure access. Some things may break. Do we have an idea about what is going to break? Because there's a certain level of pain that's probably acceptable here. But like, if everything breaks for everyone, then everyone is going to be sad.
Well, I don't think, at least there shouldn't be any things that depend on localhost 8080. But I'm totally sure there are. But as we discussed, it's better to do it now, and to make those who are relying on localhost 8080 to stop doing it, and make the right RBAC rules, whatever, to access the cluster. And it's a fair point, but it's a pain point for those people who are using the localhost port now, which I don't know who, but anyway.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I will just as a point of as an example, I will announce that this is happening inside Weaveworks and see if any of our tools are going to break. But no, that's fine. Good. With that in mind, do we want to announce this more broadly? Have we already announced it? What's the deal?
So
I don't think
that you don't know what's using localhost 8080. I know that if you run the like kubelet on the master, not registered into the cluster, then anything that runs on the master uses localhost 8080 with no auth, which is what we do in GKE. So like all of the cluster add-ons, like the cluster autoscaler and so forth, use localhost 8080. The add-on manager that we run through Salt or the GCI startup scripts, I believe also use localhost 8080 because they just use kubecontrol with the default credentials, which is localhost 8080 with no client credentials. And there might be some other tooling that's built around that also. So I'm not saying that's a problem to turn it off for kubeadmin, but I do know of tools that use it and rely on it.
That's
Yeah.
right. I think the all the in the documentation we have we are relying on that. Did you mention? Sorry, may have missed that. Did you mention that kubeadm would write .cube in .cube/config in root's home directory or in sudo users home directory or?
That's yet to be decided. Depending on how easy or hard we want to make it for the users. Writing to config is a bit fragile, in my opinion, at least. If you think you use like you kubeadm reset it 10 times, and we would have to make quite extensive, more logic to write to the shared file, kind of. Right now, we just write admin credentials to
That's right.
etc kubeconfig admin conf.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Robert said, but I think the thing here is that kubeadm should be like forward-looking. If I understood it correctly, generally the localhost 8080 things are like moved away from, and SIG is trying to make different credentials for everything, which I guess will happen gradually with GKE, GCE as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking that perhaps we should make sure that everything works and we don't depend on it, and provide a flag for user to opt out from having localhost 8080 on the master. I think it should still be listening on localhost 8080. It's just that there should be a flag that user could use, and we should make sure that with that flag everything else works.
Or at least a config option.
Yeah, something that I mean, yeah. So I think it is important to have some time for transition and make this change later on, because I'm pretty sure all of the documentation that we wrote would be actually referring to localhost to the default configuration essentially, right?
That's
right. And changing all that would take some time, and I'm sure there are other people's documentation that also assume the same thing. So I think, yeah, what I just said.
I'm fine with having it as an option. We already have a general, in the config file, we have a field called API server extra arguments or something, where you could basically specify insecure port.
No, Lucas, I've meant the opposite actually. I've meant that it should still be insecure, but there should be a way to opt out, because right now the problem is there is no way to get a more secure cluster if you wanted to. So
I think it should be on
providing an option that turns on more security and leave things where they are right now, it would be much safer.
I disagree. I think it should be secure by default.
So can I ask if it I'm in agreement in principle with secure by default. My question is, for things that are currently relying on localhost 8080, what is the recommended new thing that you need to do instead?
You have to pass you have to tell kubelet to use the admin conf kubeconfig file, right? In some way. It can be export kubeconfig value, or it can be kubectl -- kubeconfig who, or another way. We basically need to tell kubectl to use the right kubeconfig file.
So I wasn't talking about kubectl necessarily. I'll give you an example. So like I said, I just mentioned this in our internal Slack, and it turns out that the peer discovery in WeaveNet for Kubernetes, i.e. how the network figures out which other peers there are in the cluster so that it can join up between those peers depends on talking to the API server in this way on the masters or master. So like, what should that do instead? And I'm just using that as an example of other software that may want to be able to talk to the Kubernetes API.
Actually, I think I've read the code, and it's just a fallback, right? If it can't connect by the service account, it fallbacks to localhost 8080. In this case, but yeah, in other cases, it may be that it always uses localhost 8080.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
so,
let's not digress this meeting on that issue then.
Yeah, but we could do a flag that, well, it's secure by default, and we have a knob to turn it off to make it insecure again, to expose the API server insecurely on 8080. Okay. Cool, but let's continue to the next thing.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say is that there should be a way for the user, at least in this transition, it should be, once the user ran kube at a minute, it should be kubectl, anything after that should work as it does. So right now that relies on localhost. Changing that to some configuration is probably what we should do, but a config file perhaps is a thing. Yeah, that's I think the more important thing here, really.
Feel free to send a PR to mock with the .cube/config file. It should work, and that's the best way to make it secure and not have to do an extra step. But until that, we have to tell kubeconfig, kubectl, or whatever other client to use admin console.
Yep. Okay, so let's try and get through the rest of Lucas's PRs in the stand-up.
Yeah, we have...
Just a one-sentence description on each is fine, unless people feel...
Yeah. In 42018, a new flag is added, /dir, directory, is added for specifying where the certs should be stored. And it also has a new flag that APIs --API server cert extra sans, for specifying extra subject alternative names. Then we have also a face command for the certs. So now it's possible to just invoke the certificates face. I know this is really useful for cargo, if I understood it correctly, for example, that they could just take advantage, just run this command, and they instantly have all certificates needed in that directory. So that's basically what that PR is doing. Then we have in 42064, let me see. The advertise addresses command line flag is changed from API-advertise addresses to API server advertise address, and it's only one address. And from API port to API server bind port, and some other smaller changes to the config file as well.
So the API server addresses to address Is this an explicit thing? Is Mike on?
No, Mike.
So like there was a long tail of woe regarding how we did API server discovery for multi API servers in the future. We're not doing HA now, but I just want to make sure that we don't kick ourselves in the future, because next release I want to start to dig into HA here.
So what did you mean?
So it was always addresses and not a single address for the API server.
The API server.
That's
Yes.
right. So I'd like to just mention why it's been that way initially. So there are two flags that allow user to add extra IP addresses that may be, the NAT type of IP addresses of the master or DNS names that they would have to register themselves somehow, whatever means are. Those certs will go in the those addresses and DNS names will go in the certs when we create certs. And the idea to have these things separately would be that the Cobra, P flag actually has the IP address flag type. However, it turned out that it doesn't have IP address slice type, so it became a string. Now that I remember how it went, that's one thing. And the other thing is that essentially these are all things that you would want in your search for the master, which could work in an HA case if you're thinking of adding masters somehow through your own means, and just reusing the cert that Cubadum initially created. And only the first address in that list is triggered especially, and is actually used for printing the Cubadum join command. But those are not used as bind addresses. We still listen on 000 because there's no easy way to guess what address you should be listening on that could work, again, in a situation where you have NAT or something. So I think the bigger question here that we could discuss is that, how would we say that, if you want to bind on a specific address, how do we make sure that once we did bind on that address, user would be still able to use whatever public NAT IP address that their cloud provider may provide or whatever.
Okay, so the new things here are we have a separate flag for the certs for alt names where you can specify both IP addresses and DNS names, and this is just for certs, and the advertise address, which currently is only a string because the API server doesn't allow more than one, is only used for advertising. But then we also have a general method to override API server controller manager and scheduler arguments, where you could, it's a map string. So you could just do in the config file API server extra arguments or whatever it's called, and bind address : some address. Or you could override the advertise addresses as well, or whatever in the future.
I guess the initial design was aiming to not having to provide all the flags that the API server or any other components provide, which currently far too many, and thereby there were these flags that only loosely mapped to the flags of the API server. I don't think anybody really wants to use API servers advertise IP address flag. I barely see any good use for that particular flag.
Yeah, it is as it is now. The same behavior is preserved. So, and the next one is, and the largest one, is, let me see the PR number. 41417, and this one hooks everything together. We have two new controllers in the controller manager, Bootstrap Signer and the Token Cleaner for the Bootstrap tokens. And we have a new authentication module in the API server, Bootstrap Token Authenticator or something. And all of those are disabled by default. But anyway, they are enabled with kubeadm. So I made this PR for it removes the cluster info struct. It removes all the kube discovery related code. I have another PR that removes all of kube discovery, the binary, the code, everything from the tree, since it isn't needed. And basically this PR is enabling the controller, the authentication module. It is creating the cluster info config map. It's creating default Bootstrap tokens, and it's removing discovery from init, and it's hooking up everything, all the flags Derek has made. It's actually making those have a function, and everything. This is in line with the proposal that's merged. I can paste the link. It has been updated after a lot of discussion with Joe primarily and me. Can paste it there.
Okay, so
and yeah,
I was just going to say, I mean, I think this is good. We've got quite a lot to get through on the agenda. So, does anyone have any questions about the Bootstrap Signer thing, moving away from kube discovery and moving to the embedded API server implementation of this? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lucas. I just feel like this isn't really contentious, so I don't think we need to spend too long discussing it. It's awesome, though.
From Alex in the chat about server having multiple NICs.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I was just seeing an older question in the chat from Alex about what happens with the advertised address if a server has multiple NICs.
That's a good question. Does anyone know the answer?
The default behavior from in the API server is to use the default route and advertise that one. I guess in the future we maybe should change this behavior and let the advertised addresses parameter to the API server be a string slice or something, or it should detect more cleverly or something. But right now, it's only possible to advertise one address, but it listens on every by default on 000.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that answers the question. Cool. Were there any other PRs of yours, Lucas, that you wanted to highlight to this group?
I also have one for the release repo, which secures the kubelet and adds S390X and PowerPC as platforms, in line with the other. Well, in line with Kubernetes in general. Those two arches have been added mainline, so we should build debs for them as well.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So moving on, Derek, were any of these issues not covered in your previous?
Sorry, I just lost connection. What did you say?
I just said, were any of the things on your list here in the stand-up section not covered when you spoke?
No, I'm good. I'm good to go.
Awesome. Okay, so Devin.
I put together one change to just demote the self-hosted off of the CLI and put it into the config file.
Cool.
And that's been merged. I have another one up for porting the checkpointer, and as requested, I made an attempt to preserve the Git history from a completely separate tree, which was the bootkube repo. That worked in that there's history there. It's kind of broken because the commits don't really map to the correct commits because they don't exist. I don't think there's any way around this because we're trying to do something that's involving a lot of black magic. I actually think I'm going to propose we just forget that, and like if Aaron or anybody at CoreOS wanted to just put up a PR with the one file, just so that the credit is correctly attributed, and then we could go to work on building it. I started looking at build. I'm a little jammed up, so if anybody has advice on how we want this thing to be built, I don't really know of any examples of images that are coming from external repos, and I'm not really sure what we want there. I could probably find some time to work on it, but I'm a little unsure where to go. So there's a pull request out there if anybody wants to chime in on what we could do there.
Cool.
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead.
Aaron, go. Aaron, say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm happy to merge it, and I can, like, if we merge it and then we have no build initially, and we're still going to have to iterate on the code in the bootkube repo, and then we're just essentially going to end up probably having to commit code in two different places because they're going to start diverging. So that would be my one concern, is if we're moving this code, we should have a way of building it, but I'm not familiar with the Google infrastructure for building images at all. Conversely, if what's blocking us from using this right now is just adding other architectures to the build, we could potentially do that in the bootkube repo. But I'm pretty open. That's just more or less my concern, is like, we can't start using it or migrating to it until we have images being built, and it doesn't seem like there's any plans for that yet.
Stupid question from me. Can we vendor it?
Yeah.
Well, I think for now, it's easiest to just build for multiple architectures in bootkube until the transition period. Well, until we have a stable checkpointer from you. I understood it's gonna change quite a lot, right? Yet
it won't change that much, but there's still stuff that needs to be done in it, and so it's just, if we end up doing it in two places, it's just a little bit more of a pain. But it's not like significant change.
So, sorry, I guess I missed some context here. So is the goal here that we move the checkpointer code from the bootkube repository to Kubernetes?
yes, it is. To the kubeadm repository.
To the kubeadm repository.
Yeah,
okay,
and
so just vendoring bootkube doesn't really achieve that goal.
no.
No, yeah, there's no filter for there.
Sorry, Aaron?
It's a very small piece of the bootkube repository. We only need, like, it's just like kind of lives on its own. It's just in the same repo for convenience more than anything. I mean, we could put it in its own top level repo kind of anywhere if we really wanted to. If we wanted to separate this into a different incubator project or something like that.
Yeah, but so the main blocker here is that we need someone from Google to actually push images. If we move this image to GCR, only Googlers have access to push that one. And it could be a blocker if everyone updates it a lot and comes with new versions and improvements, and those images aren't pushed. So that's, in my understanding, the main blocker at the moment.
But that's only true if we stick it in the Google containers bucket. We can create a different bucket that more people have access to.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much open at this point. That was my biggest concern, was just that we should be able to build images somewhere.
Yeah. I don't have strong opinions either way either. So
what's the shortest path? What's the
I think the shortest path is to just build for multiple architectures in Bootkube and go on with that for a month or so, and use that image in KubeADM. This is everything after the code freeze and when master is open for 1.7 work. But anyway, I think that's the shortest path.
If you want to just open an issue in Bootkube for the architectures that it should be built for, then we can just add that.
I mean, may I just mention one thing? It sounds to me that there's a bit of a complexity involved around when it comes to releasing images for yet another component that we decide to ship as an image or binaries. So I wonder whether there should exist some kind of common automated way of publishing image releases, etc. When they emerge to upstream, to master and upstream, that type of thing. Why haven't we got anything like that?
Well, ask the release team, I guess. Anyway, let's do this for now and just build for multiple architectures. With Cube, use that image in KubeADM as soon as master opens for 1.7 work. Right.
Cool. Yep. I mean,
I'll close that here for now.
Cool. Yep. As long as there's no objections to that, that's fine. I can only imagine that an objection might be in the form of like, well, do we want to have KubeADM depend on some external thing? But we already depend on etcd, for example. So there's precedent. I don't see it as being a problem.
Well, and I see it as well. Until at the time we get to 1.7. I think we have moved into our own repo and transitioned properly. So
okay.
I think it's a temporary step.
Temporary solution. I'll just document that. So the long-term goal is to move the checkpointer from CoreOS to Kubernetes. Is that correct, Aaron?
From Bootkube.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Cool. Okay, so Jacob.
Sorry, totally caught off guard there. So lately I've been mostly working on GKE specific things. So it's been a while since I've been in kubeadmin land, but a while ago I had written or added a lot of support to Kubernetes Anywhere and are testing for it to be able to bring up bootstrap GCE clusters using kubeadmin with the hopes of creating a CI job for end-to-end tests for kubeadmin that had kind of gone to the back burner for a while. Last week, I converted that job, which was having nothing but failures, given our Jenkins environment, to the test infrastructure's new tool, Prow. It still has a few more kinks to work out, but I'm hoping to work on that this week. And with the added next step of actually creating a PR blocking job for anything that breaks kubeadmin by running our end-to-end test against a fresh cluster. So cool stuff, but a little more work to be done there.
Awesome. That's really, really good. When Ilya and I were testing kubeadm earlier and we observed that kubeadm init and join had broken, we wished that there had been CI that had stopped that change being merged.
Ironically, one of the fixes I need to do now is update that to match the existing behavior so that it actually works, because it no longer works.
Yep, exactly.
And just regarding the validation thing, it had never worked.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll avoid merging features that never work as well.
Yeah,
did work.
Well, the only thing was we didn't use validation from until like this week.
Okay. Okay, well, that's great. And it answers one of the questions I was going to ask later. So Wonderful. Thank you, Jacob. I'm just curious, maybe in 30 seconds, could you describe what prow is?
Sure. Prow is a collection of utilities that I think respond to GitHub events. We used to use Jenkins for everything, but Prow has utility that'll read GitHub comments and then apply, like the Slack LGTM label. There is a Prow component that looks for that and then applies labels. It also looks for the retest command and runs tests. It also runs our PR blocking jobs and updates the status of PRs based on the results of those.
Cool.
There's a subdirectory in test infra that contains many additional subdirectories because it's a collection of little utilities that are all under the Prow umbrella.
Awesome. That's good to know. Cool. Okay. I think Justin is up next, unless Jacob had anything else.
No, that's it.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. So good morning. Big news for 1.6 is KubeUp AWS is dead. Long live the future. So that's basically, we didn't have any test coverage. It wasn't really a good idea to keep it going. It didn't work. We killed it. Yay.
Hooray.
Yeah, exactly. In Copsland, we did a 1.5.2 beta, like the highlights are CoreOS, CloudFormation, Flannel, Canal, lots of bug fixes thanks to the 31 contributors. And coming on the radar, GCE, ContainerOS, Bare Metal. In general, we are driving or having discussions on better IAM integration, which I am still hoping will make 1.6. And CloudFormation resource ownership. So like when we added CloudFormation, there's now a huge discussion about who owns the various resources, who owns the network, who owns volumes, who owns instances. And I am also going to try to leverage kubeadm for RBAC for 1.6. It might be a code level integration, but I'm going to try.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a vendor in that case. I didn't have time to make a CLI command for it. So.
We already vendor Kubernetes, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. So next on the agenda is just reporting on the testing that Ilya and I did, which fortunately has been pretty much all of the issues that we came up have already been addressed in this call. So that's good. People know what the problems are. There was this discussion about the kubeadm Docker and Docker cluster repo potentially being helpful, but it sounds like the work that Jacob is doing on end-to-end CI jobs is how we're going to get there instead.
Well, no, it's sort of related, right? It's actually the end-to-end CI jobs would be for running things in cloud providers and making sure somebody who hasn't tested anything locally will not break, right? But then if you still need a way for testing something locally quicker than it takes.
And according. Sorry, my internet connection's been really crappy. But according to the doc that we discussed, I think about a month ago, Jacob's thing is just the first step. And it tests bringing up a Kubernetes cluster and then running conformance tests on it, but it's not really testing specific kubeadmin things. And so we still are going to create an end-to-end test specifically for kubeadmin. This was just the first phase. And so something like Docker and Docker, I mean, that's fine, I can investigate it. But since we had the code freeze, and I think Lucas was wise in saying this, he suggested that I focus not on tests, but getting some features in. And so now during the code freeze, I will go back to working more on doing the test stuff and figuring out what that means. But the first step was to get Jacob's thing in, have that be a PR blocker so that we have some verification that things are working, and then create a specific kubeadmin end-to-end test that, tests all the, separate functionality kubeadmin has.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I just would mention then that today when Ilya and I were doing some manual testing, we found that Mirantis's kubeadmin Docker and Docker cluster tool worked great and was much faster than spinning up VMs. So if you haven't tried it, give it a go. And if it's useful, then that's awesome. There's one other thing that we thought of there is that just when we were discussing it was, it was proposed that this repo was put into incubation. I wonder if it just makes sense to actually, if we end up using it, or even if it just remains a useful tool that people can use for local testing, maybe it could skip incubation and go straight to the kubeadm repo, because it really is a tool for testing kubeadm. I just thought I'd mention that.
So I've been bantering about this with Joe. It'd be ideal to have like a local kubeadm up, because right now a lot of times develop testing is local cluster up, which then will do all the stuff on your machine in this weird haphazard fashion. Ideally, if this is going to be the deployment topology that we recommend for, actual deployments, having a local up scriptory, which could potentially be Docker, and Docker doesn't have to be, but whatever, that would be awesome, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one context is testing, but the other context is like, if you want to say Docker for Mac, if you want to use Docker for Mac, let's say, right?
Yep.
That's something I've spent a little time investigating. If anybody's interested in the Docker for Mac type use case, I have some bits that are working. Well, sort of. I mean, I found a bug in Docker for Mac, but
you managed to crash it, but it's pretty cool what you're doing there. Okay, great. So I mentioned that. Lucas?
I've also run Docker and Docker. I haven't exactly run my Rentis project, but under something on the 17th issue in kubeadm mentioned, it's very easy to make this. Docker and Docker with my Rentis may have this as well. I haven't checked. Just make a Docker file that installs the debs and runs them, and I've done that with great success as well. This will, I think this will make it possible to spin up like 10 clusters upon 10 Kubernetes clusters upon existing Kubernetes cluster, right, for testing. So you could have just a YAML file or something that would test Kubernetes with kubeadm by spinning up new clusters on top.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Sounds good.
I think it works well.
Yeah, it's worked reasonably well in my testing. I think the being able to quickly run it. The only thing I'd say, like, just to plant a seed at Derek's mind there, like, it would be a pretty quick way of running a bunch of acceptance tests that test specific kubeadm features. So I'll just mention that. Okay, we did also notice init still has discovery and join has token. As of Derek's move away from error list PR.
You want to explain it, Lucas?
Yeah. So basically, why you're hitting these strange things on head is because of we haven't got the PRs merged.
Yeah,
they are in queue, but
that's fine.
Gradually, they'll become.
I just didn't know which PRs to merge into like some mega branch to test.
I have it in one of my PRs that, well, it's the one that hooks up everything to the Bootstrap signer, and as a part of that, it also swaps token for discovery for token and adds token TTL as we decided.
Okay. That's cool. I just wanted to, I'm not complaining that it was like that. I just wanted to flag it in case people had missed it. That's all.
Yeah, it's under control.
Awesome.
As soon as I get my PRs merged, I think we're going to have a really good state at master.
Cool. Well, I will continue to test it and just sort of make sure that we can dot all the I's and cross the T's and polish it up a bit if necessary in time for the 1.6, hopefully. So Great stuff. Next, I just wanted to basically say that I'm going to be working on the docs. Just to reiterate that, Lucas was kind enough to give me a very thorough changelog verbally, which I wrote down in a text file on my laptop. So I just wanted to check, am I on the hook for the changelog as well as the updates to the kubeadmin guide and the kubeadm advanced docs?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand, but I can maybe review and give more advices verbally.
Great, that would be really useful because I didn't make the changes, so it's really useful to get someone else who did.
Yeah.
People who did to review. Does the changelog go in as one PR, or do each of the changelog items go in with each of the PRs?
Well, right now we haven't used the normal release note tooling that much. I mean, maybe half of the kubeadm PRs have note have got a changelog, but this is, in the end, this is only showing up in the at the changelog at the root of the Kubernetes repo in the all for releases. We should do something that more on a higher level says that, hey, this has changed from 1.5 to 1.6.
Yeah,
that doesn't map to PRs. It's, I mean, one feature could have been implemented in 3 PRs. So,
no, I completely understand. Yeah, we need something that is pitched at users and tells them why they should care.
Yeah, exactly.
So I will have a go at that once I've grokked what all of the changes are. Cool. Okay, and the actual process there is it a PR against the docs repo, or is it a PR against Kubernetes?
Well, we have.
Where is the changelog? Basically, is what I'm asking.
Well, the main changelog is in the root of the Kubernetes repo, but the 1.6 aggregation of the higher level changelog is, at least in 1.5, it lived in the features repo, a draft, and then that draft was copied into the main repo when 1.5 was actually released. So, but we just have 3 sentences, less or more. So at least I made for the 2 earlier kubeadm releases, I made a changelog file in the kubeadm repo as well, with more detail, and that way we could have 15 lines of more detail with the changelog, but three lines to the features repo once they start the aggregation.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
If anyone who's involved in that could ping me if it's when it happens, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll try and seek it out. Super. I also just wanted to flag that at some point I'm going to work on a 1.7 roadmap, so please send me input on what you'd like to see in 1.7. I think we already have a pretty clear idea. I think we already have quite a lot of shared understanding on that, but if people have strong opinions, please ping me on Slack, and I'll try and aggregate everyone's input. Derek, you mentioned Google Groups discussion.
Yeah, so the GitHub groups. So Robert, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he created all of the GitHub groups and the extra Google groups to be in compliance with the new SIG rules. But I think that because I was in that process, I requested to be part of those groups, and I still think that I'm the only member. And so the other day there was a PR on, I think, something to do with Azure or something like that. Anyways, they messaged that Google group, and I was the only one in the group. And so I think that we need to populate those groups correctly. So they were created, which is great, but if I'm the only one in them, I just have to constantly be doing messages and stuff like that. So I think that the people who should be in those groups should ask to be joined in those groups, and so that we can be using the system that's in place. So people can ping that group, and get a response from it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Could I ask Derek, please? Would you mind just sending an email that draws attention to itself to the existing SIG-cluster-lifecycle group, inviting people to join or request access to the groups, and actually just list out which groups they are and what they're for? That would be incredibly useful. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify there, chatting with Brian Grant, the purpose of the groups is for people to be notified on GitHub issues. It's not for people to email the Google groups directly for user support, right? So if people are just finding that Google group and sending an email to it, that's not how we should be responding to them. They should be emailing the SIG-cluster-lifecycle group for user-initiated actions. The Google groups and the GitHub groups are both intended for notification of PRs. The Google groups you can join if you are not part of the Kubernetes organization. So if you want to be notified of PRs but don't want to join the Kubernetes organization, you can join the Google group. It's open to anyone. If you are part of the Kubernetes organization, you can decide if you want to join the GitHub group or the Google group. It doesn't really matter. You'll get notifications either way.
I see.
Yeah, just a few cents from me, so it's here speaking. I've been actually creating, I've been the person who been interacting with Brian Grant and this stuff, and I actually created the instruction how to follow this procedure, and I created this procedure. So the main goal for you as the community, as the SIG, you have to have your own mailing list where all the conversations are happening. So these specific mailing lists, for different purposes, were created only as the email aliases, email bots to create the bot for GitHub, where you'll be able to which bot you'll be able to assign to the specific team. So if you'd like to receive some notifications regarding PR requests or features or anything else, following our name convention, you simply have to be added to these teams, and that's all. So you shouldn't subscribe to this mailing list. They're only for technical purposes.
Right, and the other point there is that the actual SIG mailing list should not be able to be mentioned in any PRs and should only be used for actual human conversations and not for any robots.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, good to know. Okay, thanks everyone. We're out of time. Anything that was below the line on the agenda, we can talk about next week. Thanks everyone. Next week. Cheers.
Cool.
Bye.